Let's just do a few updates. Probably one of the most important ones would be we did have a meeting with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That meeting took place a week ago yesterday, I believe it was. The regional director, Tuggle, out of New Mexico, as you may recall, had promised that he would hold a meeting of quote-unquote stakeholders in the community to talk about the compatibility determination, which has been dropped, and he promised to talk about the movement of the buoys in what's known as the ride spot by half a mile. Well, interestingly enough, so we get the invitation, and I guess he defined stakeholders as anyone related to government, and that was it. So we decided that that wasn't enough, and we invited Marine Association, other elected officials, including Blake's office, McCain's office, Gosar's office. We invited the Chamber of Commerce, the Partnership for Economic Development, and there may have been others. Yeah, we got Marine Association. But the way we felt it is that stakeholders are defined as users of the lake, not just those who might control it or have some sort of agency relationship to the lake. And I understand what he was trying to do was bring the parties together on the memorandum of understanding that we have with a variety of agencies. The discussion lasted a good 2 hours. It was pretty clear from the beginning that he wasn't very interested in moving the buoys back to their original position, which we were quite disappointed in, and we voiced that disappointment to a point where he finally acquiesced and said that he would study the issue to make sure that moving them back wasn't quote-unquote an arbitrary decision. In our view, the decision to move them where they was already arbitrary, so you're just fixing a wrong. The way they view it is that if they move them back, they are subject to litigation. That works two ways, quite honestly. So anyway, we agreed to provide them with documentation showing that the cause of moving them in the first place over public safety was quite honestly staged events. And I've already received emails from those individuals who witnessed what occurred that caused the Fish and Wildlife Service to move those buoys. They witnessed what occurred, and they made it pretty clear it was a staged event, not by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but by the people involved. They were very obstinate, made sure that they got in the path of boats, would not move even after being asked politely if they could go to closer to shore, out of the depths of the water, and they just wanted to stay right there and then take pictures and make claims that they were being run over, which they weren't. So we're hopeful that he will do what he says, which is to look at all the evidence and then make a decision to move back to where we were in April of 2015. One of the things that's pretty clear they want to do is reopen a compatibility determination. They want to look at what the compatible uses are on the river and the lake inside the refuge area. They can't go beyond that. They wanted to try to tell us that just because we're having a relook at a compatibility determination, it doesn't mean more restrictions. It could be other things as well. We'll have to see what they come up with. We reminded them that it was going to be incredibly difficult for the community to get on board with a new compatibility determination when they haven't fixed the bright spot. That the community was loud and clear when over 1,000 people showed up and said, hit the reset button and then let's talk. And they have not hit the reset button. So we'll see what happens. We said, well, when are you going to get back to us? He said, well, it won't be a year. It won't be 6 months. So I don't know if that means 3 months, 5 months. We're hopeful that it will.
It's federal time, Mayor. So
Federal time. Yeah, so we're hopeful.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just curious.
Sure.
People that supposedly were staging this, what were they in? They could,
Kayaks.
oh, kayaks. Okay. Motorless.
Mayor, if I could just tag on here real quick. One of the positive things to come out of the meeting last week, in my opinion, was Director Tuggle's promise to work with the agencies. Basically, the folks in the room last week were all of, not just the stakeholders, but also all of the jurisdictional authorities or agencies that have some jurisdiction on the lake were in that room. And we offered as a group to work with Dr. Tuggle to work on a new compatibility determination in the future so that we can avoid the public outrage that comes when the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service presents what we would describe as a flawed CD to the community, and then the community ends up in an outrage. A compatibility determination has to be done for the Havasu National Wildlife Refuge, as well as all of the national wildlife refuges in the service's jurisdiction. That is a requirement under the 1997 Refuge Act of 1997 or something. These compatibility determinations need to be done every 15 years. And it's time for this CD to be done for the Havasu National Wildlife Refuge. So it's not a matter of a compatibility determination never being done. It needs to be done, but the positive thing, as I said, is that now the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, through Director Tuggle, has said they will work with this group first before they draft the next one to be presented to the public. So we feel pretty good about that, because all of the things that we didn't like about the first one that got the community all whipped into a froth, i.e. the weightless speeds for the entire 17-mile stretch of Topog Gorge, even though they said that wasn't their intent. In fact, that language was in the compatibility determination draft, and so and we had to bring that to their attention very strongly. So we do have that guarantee that they're going to work with us in the future to make sure that the next one doesn't turn into a disaster.
I'm sure you're aware that in other regions, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service does include the broad spectrum representation that you were just addressing, without having to be reminded to do so. And so the outcomes of any kinds of compatibility studies or needs that they feel need to be addressed are taken care of within that group. And whether this region chooses to recognize that or not is really unfortunate, because within that group there will be people that share the concerns of the Fish and Wildlife Service, and so things are worked out in a way that the representation addresses really all the needs that are there.
Yeah, and I think, to Charlie's point, maybe one of the larger disappointments that we had with the refuge manager that, by the way, that refuge manager has now gone to Yuma.
Should have been Alaska.
But one of the disappointments we had is that they were a party to this MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding. And the MOU was simply saying, amongst all the agencies, that if you're going to make any sort of changes, let all the rest of the agencies know what you're planning, so that they can be prepared. And they flat ignored the MOU. They signed it and then ignored it. They didn't care about it. Director Tuggle, to his credit, has said, you know what, he didn't even know that it was signed by the regional manager. And now he would like to bring in more stakeholders to the MOU. And he said he will be the guy signing it to make sure that everybody in the organization in the area knows about it. Chuck?
Was any of the other, like Bureau and Reclamation and other people that we have to get permits to do anything on that part of it? Anyway, were they as incensed as we were about what Fish and Wildlife did?
It depends on the agencies. Arizona Game and Fish was very unhappy with the actions. The Coast Guard didn't care.
I'm talking about federal,
I know.
like Bureau.
Right, but Bureau of Rec, I think they took a hands-off position. Because in many cases they look at it and say, well, this is the refuge area, and they have sole jurisdiction over that, or pretty much sole jurisdiction. And but we look at it as it's still a lake that it should be open to all users, and we don't put our hands over our eyes and say, well, you know, it should be a free-for-all. We understand that in certain areas you need to have no wake zones for safety and all the rest of it. We get all that. But what we couldn't figure out, and we brought this up again, was what had drastically changed that caused the movement of these buoys. Because he said, you know, when we get all said and done, not everybody's going to be happy with the outcome. And we said, well, let's go back to January of 2015. Who was unhappy? Nobody.
Kayakers.
But that's two people. It was literally two people.
Yeah.
And so what we said is, if you moved it back to that, and you get rid of the staged incidents, then frankly we were peacefully coexisting for more than 2 decades. Why can't we do that today? So, you know, again, we're very hopeful that something will occur, and we would like to open up the ride spot. I think he went out to the ride spot. I don't think he got the picture that he says, well, it's very shallow. Well, if he went out to the ride spot, I don't know how he could come up with that, because there's a channel along there that's quite deep. So I don't know who took him where, but he obviously didn't go in the right spot. So, no pun intended. Okay, let's see, what else are we working on? The 280 project, I think we did talk about the fact that there is an agreement between Arizona State Parks and the developer. We're hoping to begin constructing the roads that are going to be required probably in the next 30 to 60 days. I hope we're going to be putting a shovel in the ground. The America's Best Communities project, we just had to put in our second quarter report. We have made substantial progress on all of the tactics that we have said we would utilize, which is probably, in that report, there's a couple dozen, 30 different progress elements that we're working on. A couple of them we are a little behind on. Most we're either on time or ahead of schedule. So we're hopeful there. And I don't think, in fact, we didn't know this. It is our understanding too that there is a new partner in this contest, Cisco Systems, and it is our understanding that they've agreed to put another $1 million into the pot. So the prize money has gone up for both first, second, and third places. So we're thrilled about that. But again, we're making a lot of progress. We've got the 280 project moving along. Charlie and a small group of individuals went to the Phoenix area to begin looking at eco-environmental centers to get some ideas of what ours could look like. We're continuing to work with the developer in engineering and design and all the rest of that good stuff. We're also continuing to have discussions with a number of different property owners in the downtown area to begin that signature project that we're looking for there, where we can create a gathering spot for the community, and it would also, we think, spur development in the area as well. So we're working very hard on a lot of different fronts.
Any update on the new hotel?
Sure. They had a meeting Monday at ASU to kind of lay out their plans. For those of you who weren't there or weren't part of our other discussions, VRE, after a lot of work, a lot of money spent, concluded that for now, having a Homewood Suites hotel in that original spot next to the water, behind the visitor center basically, west of the visitor center, just wasn't financially feasible. The cost went up substantially, and there were two reasons. There were, of course, engineering issues and utility issues. But in addition, they had added a lot of amenities that to that Homewood Suites that caused the price to go up, and their investors balked at the new price. So the people we're dealing with at VRE, they were quite honestly very afraid that their investors were going to say, take the money and let's develop at another city because we have lots and lots of opportunities. But they were able to convince them that this was still a great site for a hotel, that the studies that they have done showed that the market needs another hotel. And so they were able to convince them, and they're going to put a Holiday Inn Express in the, I guess it would be defined as the southeast corner of the property. So as you have McCulloch Boulevard coming down and turning, as you get past Lake Havasu Avenue and starts to turn into the bridge, and you got Highway 95 in that corner right there, pretty much below where the statues are. And so it'll be 4 stories, 90 some rooms, 96 rooms. It will be a good project. It will be a very good project.
Another 24.
Are they mandated to have any shops on the ground floor or anything?
The answer to that is the current zoning for that area. However, we're going to take a look at it because shops there will fail. It's in the corner. Nobody will go there. And that's their concern. Well, we can build those shops, but renting them, because nobody's going to walk all the way over to that corner, and they have a great point. And so...
And the commercial is the village.
Yeah, the commercial area is the village, and they're not going to destroy it. They're going to keep that intact. So we're going to take a look at that, because the last thing we want to do is have a zoning regulation that causes people to fail. And we don't want that to occur. So if we need to make that change for that area, we're certainly willing to consider it. Anything close to the village, we are not willing to consider it because we know those can be successful. Having that hotel there does not prohibit or exclude them creating the Homewood Suites eventually. They want to prove to their investors that this hotel can be, that the Holiday Inn Express will be very successful. And if it is, they can either build the Homewood Suites themselves, or find another investor slash builder to do it. So that's what they're hoping for. They kept the franchise for the Homewood Suites. They did not give up on it.
And the building plans and everything related to the construction of the Hilton Homewood, that's about 70% complete now. So they have a significant investment in that project alone. So it does bring value to that area. Having all of those entitlements and the plans and everything prepared for it, it's just, as the mayor said, their investment group just isn't willing to spend the money to do that project right now. But they're willing to spend the money to do the Holiday Inn project. So, and just to clarify on the commercial on the ground floor requirement, you know, that requirement was kind of a product of a blue ribbon panel that didn't want to see valuable ground space in the English Village area used up by hotel rooms and such, or condos, or whatever the proposal might have been. Now this particular hotel project, though, isn't taking up any ground space in the English Village per se. The space that it's going to be placed on now is parking lot and undeveloped area of that property. So
What are they gonna do with the demolition area?
They're going to beautify that area.
if you go down there right now, you'll see equipment, heavy equipment moving around. It was kind of in a mess for a while after they did the demo, because it was just rough graded in preparation for a building project. Well, now that building project is being put on the back burner, they have equipment down there now that is finished grading it. They're smoothing it out. They're taking care of that piece of retaining wall that was left down there. That's probably completely covered up now. It had to remain because there was buried infrastructure, utilities right behind it, so it was kind of keeping those utilities in place. That's why they had to leave it there. But now I believe they backfilled that area, and they'll probably smooth it all out, and it'll be a much more attractive space. They're going to take the fence down, open up that parking again, improve the pavement out in the parking, so it's not going to stay like it was. Right now, I think you'll find it 100% better than it was just a week or so ago.
Give it to McAndrew and he'll plant some grass there.
Well, then in addition, they're going to beautify they plan to beautify the English Village as well, in terms of and whether or not they're looking at, they're not promising, they're looking at, for instance, putting pavers in instead of the old cement that's there, because it is in their best interest that people who stay at their new hotel can look out the window and it's pretty to look at. They don't want them looking at an eyesore. So they get that, we get that. So they're working on it. You know that's what I think. Maybe some don't understand. These folks have spent a lot of money, and they don't just want to give up on the project. And it's tough to recoup that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, kind of a two-part question in regards to the 280 project. Where is your proposed road off the highway going to start? It's going to be on the frontage road off of Sweetwater. That's kind of the first part. The second part would be, is the developer committed to building the marina and boat launch prior to opening up and developing his own lots for sale, and when that time frame might be?
Yeah, great questions. First of all, Sweetwater will be one of the access points, but ADOT is requiring a second one. So they're going to have to put another light closer to where the project's actually taking place. So there'll be two access points.
That's going to be probably between the Partners Point entrance off the frontage road and the water safety building, somewhere in that.
Yeah, it's about a half a mile, maybe a little over half a mile north of the Tacoma intersection. And yes, there will be another traffic light on 95 there, but it's there to accommodate that intersection. So obviously, it's going to be green most of the time until that park is being utilized, or the launch facilities are being utilized, or the residents who might live down there someday will use it. So hopefully, it won't be too much of an inconvenience to get from one end of town to the other.
And then is the developer committed to building the marina and launch prior to?
Well, they will start.
Doing that first.
They'll start doing that 1st, I believe they're going to open up a small area of their development that has more of the villa-type homes, not the larger homes. I think they want to do that probably within the next year or so, but their primary focus will be on the new launch ramp and amenities because they know that that's a selling point for everything else. And we want to see it, and I know they've got a contractual commitment with Arizona State Parks as well, so they can't just ignore it.
The golf course is still part of that proposal?
You know, it's I'd love to say yes, it is.
We call it the golf course dream.
Yeah. Honest, I mean, I'm a golfer. I love to play golf. I think this would be a fantastic golf course. But honestly, there isn't a lot of community support for a golf course. There really isn't. Well, yeah, for a municipal golf course, which, quite honestly, I think it could be a great spot for one. And I get that golf is in decline at the moment. But there will be a point in time where the number of courses now match up with the usage as well. And, you know, when we look at other golf courses that are uni-owned in the area, and they're doing fine. They really are. So,
Would that be an option, open it up to private?
This golf course would have to be a municipal course because it's being constructed on federal public land.
right.
So it can't be privately owned. That doesn't preclude us from working with a private developer to build it and operate it, but it will always have to be a municipal public course.
So we'll see. But we're still working towards a Phoenix-style botanical gardens in the area as well. So we're pretty excited about that. Let me ask June first. Go ahead, June.
Chuck always asks me, have they torn down the berm yet?
No.
When we drive down 95. So you were saying that the roads will be maybe constructed within the next 30, 60 days?
Started. Yeah, started.
So will that include the berm?
Yes.
The berm's coming down. And that will mean, you know, and that's the interesting part because as you go up that highway, all you see is that big berm, so you really can't see that property. Once that's down, the views are going to be spectacular.
I can't see it,
Yeah.
but, somebody told me that where the water safety building road is, that somebody's cutting a road in there. Is that just to kind of get equipment down in there, or
Not for
have you
sure.
heard anything about that?
No.
Okay. Also, where the roads are gonna go in, where the signal light and everything is, do we have to pay for the signal light and stuff?
Half of it.
Half of it, okay. Now, are those roads already engineered, ready to go,
Yes.
designed and everything? So all you have to do is let the contract out?
We have a contract ready to let. We have a contractor that is eager to mobilize. We got very good bids on that project. We were very pleased. And in fact, we expect or we hope to have a groundbreaking ceremony towards the end of this month, probably either the 19th or the 26th. If it's the 19th, we're hoping that we can get Senator John McCain here because he's going to be kind of be in the neighborhood. But that's remains to be seen. That's a subject to his availability and his calendar. But we're eager, we're ready to do groundbreaking. We want to get that project started right away.
Good. 19th would be great, and 26th, because next weekend I'm going to.
Okay, well, we'll let McCain down. He's going to have to reschedule.
Sorry, Senator.
Yeah.
Chuck's not here this week.
Yeah, Chuck's on his way to do some deep sea fishing.
He's out catching yellowtail, so.
I'm sure he'll know who you are, too. Let's see, what else? I just want to just briefly talk about Veterans Court.
One question over there in the park.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is there any future bike trails in the plans?
Bike trails?
Bike trails?
That will be up to the developer.
There is a
You've
line
got
on the
trails.
map.
Yeah, there's the trails.
How about for around town, anything further?
Actually, we have in our, what I would call our list of wants at the moment, to do some more bike trails along the roads. I don't want to call it a trail, but with
Delineation.
delineation of bike lanes, if you will. So because we've had a lot of requests for that. In some cases, we're trying to figure out how to get that done because it will require some widening of the roads and that sort of thing. But it's certainly on our list to move forward. Yeah, we have it's interesting because we have a list of somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 to $30 million in projects. And we think we can get them all done in the next 3 to 5 years. It's because we have built up a pretty good cash reserve. We've been very frugal. Even during the recession, we were able to build our reserves. It's just really, it's the logistics of getting them done to meet state law. We've had this discussion before, but it's called the expenditure limitation. It's a law that goes all the way back to 1980, and it basically sets a rule for cities and towns that says that based on your inflation and based on your growth, you can only spend so many dollars in a given year. And we've never had to deal with that, even though we put in a sewer project, because that was all debt funded. That's one of the loopholes, is if you're doing it with debt, which doesn't make any sense to me, but if you're doing it with debt, then it doesn't count toward that. So what we have to do is literally, even though we have the cash, we have to go out and do a borrowing, put in the project, and then pay off the debt in a relatively short period of time. At this moment in time, it's not real painful because interest rates are so low. We can get that debt really cheap. But
It's still an expense.
it's still an
And it's
expense,
still
and it's a
ridiculous.
pain that we even have to go through those kind of.
But in 2018, though, you're going to see on the ballot there will be a home rule initiative, and that will buy us 4 years exempt from expenditure limitation, but it has to be ratified by the voters. And there are other ways of doing it. We could adjust our base. There's a number of other alternatives, but I think for Lake Havasu City, the most reasonable alternative is to go for a home rule election, where every 4 years we have to go back to the voters and ask for an extension for another 4 years that will exempt us from the expenditure limitation rule and allow these projects to go forward without having to borrow. But on Tuesday, we've got $12.2 million borrowing on the agenda for the council to approve on Tuesday, and that's what it is. It's not because we don't have the money or there's no other way to do those projects. That's the only way that we can build those fields and we can do those projects that the community says they need and staff says we need to do to protect our infrastructure, water tanks and pump stations and pipelines and things like that. So it's frustrating, it's aggravating, it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense, but to change it or to fix it entirely is politically unfeasible, really, and most of the cities and towns in Arizona have already run into this limitation problem and have corrected it in some way that works best for their community. So we're gonna be faced with that. Well, we're faced with it right now, but we're gonna be going to the voters in 2018 to come up with a fix.
Yes, sir.
Garland, the area of London Bridge Park, and the beach area where the old sandbar used to be, is now gone, demoed. Does the hotel own that, or is that city, that stretch there?
That's Arizona State Trust land.
Okay.
And it's my understanding that property is under the state land lease of the Island Hotel. However, there's a property across the street that was formerly under that prior lease that I believe is now available. I could be wrong on that. It may still be under the hotel lease. And there was another property over by the Javelina Cantina. There was I think a 5 or 7 acre parcel there that's just flat open dirt space now. And that was is Arizona State Trust land that was formerly under that same lease. I believe that property and the one across the street from the hotel have been released and may be available for commercial lease now, because they've asked us to provide public access to those properties so that they can go forward to do commercial leases on those properties. But the property you're referring to, I believe, is still under the lease with the Island Hotel.
So anything that happens from the hotel down to that stretch where the sandbar is straight down to the water, that is their responsibility, the hotel?
Yes.
For maintenance, cleanup, whatever?
Yes.
So technically, you're saying that it stops at the pump house, from the pump house?
That's generally, yes.
That's
correct.
city, from the pump house
There's
back?
a sidewalk that goes down there, and that sidewalk is kind of right along that line. It goes from State Trust land under lease, and on the pump house side, that's London Bridge Beach, and it's owned by Lake Havasu City.
Okay, so that's the line there. Okay.
Right.
Because it's, the reason I'm bringing this up, because it used to be not very well maintained when the bar was there on the beach side. So I've gone to the hotel management twice, and now it's gone, so I'll pick it up from there.
Yeah, well, there's still a mess out there, and our code enforcement folks are talking to the responsible folks to try and get them to either do something with that site or go ahead and finish demoing the foundation and just get that mess out of there so it doesn't have to be
Right, because
fenced off eyesore.
The crews do such a great job keeping that park clean, then you get that line, and then it looks like hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wish I could send your people on the other side of the line to clean it up, but I can't do that. So,
They do a great job down there.
yes, they do. Thank you.
Sylvia?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Cadden. This gentleman over here was talking about the bikes, and I know that out on London Bridge Road, we're still in the city limits, I guess, before we get to the refuge, but they're certainly doing a lot of widening. And I've had people ask me, like, why aren't they going to just put, since that's when they do their bike races, it goes through there a lot, why couldn't they just incorporate and go ahead and have a bike path with that? Because it seems like they're doing a lot of widening and cleaning out there. Do you know anything that could happen? Or?
Yeah, most of that's in the county.
Is it in, I know, it, but
Yeah.
I thought the city went up to about where the refuge.
Well, right, almost at Sailing Hawks or Mesquite
Yeah.
Bay, that's where the city limits end. So
Is
the
it?
rest of that all the way out is the county. I know they've done some widening improvements. They've taken some grindings out there and started that process, but it's still pretty rough. I drove out there the other day, and
From the fire department out, they did a little wider. It's not really wide, it's hard stuff right. So I'm sure you can go gravel, people will buy,
Yeah.
right up there.
and that's the county's jurisdiction there. So
You can't even get out of town. So if you wanted to go to Pilot, it gets so narrow, it's less than 18 inches wide. You can't even ride it. Or actually, back into town, it drops off to about 6 inches wide. Where you're with the white line. Right
Yeah.
there, right by the airport. It's unstoppable. You couldn't even ride back into town, he said.
That's Steve Moss's area. We may be able to talk to him.
Yeah, Supervisor Moss is very interested in those kinds of issues. So, and I'm sure he would hear any suggestions you might have.
Yeah, he's a big advocate for trails. He was trying to actually create some trails from South Havasu all the way up to the highway 40. So, in fact, you can contact me if you want. Just give me some details, and I can get that to Supervisor Moss, or you can contact him directly. He's a good guy. He's out of the Bullhead City area. This is his district. Let's see, one other thing that we... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's kind of a two-part question.
Sure.
I'm interested in listening to what you had to say about the economic development of Lake Havasu. My interest lies in how the airport fits into that. And then the second part of that question is I look for the written statement of the vision statement for the airport. And I don't find it. I wonder if we have one where it
Well, from an airport standpoint, I guess there's a couple of things. Getting local air service, commercial air service, is a challenge to say the least. Now, we are hearing that there will be an announcement for commercial air service at the Bullhead City Airport on Monday. That's what we're hearing.
But that's a secret, so don't tell anyone.
Yeah, so don't tell anyone. I don't know who it's going to be. I do know they received a $750,000 grant to help with that project. For us to bring in commercial air service would mean that we would have to rebuild the terminal, because we don't have any of the required Department of Homeland Security gates, scanning equipment. We'd have to do all of that. Our terminal was actually designed for what, the 19-passenger kind of airline, and they don't fly them anymore. So, but in terms of a vision statement for the airport, I don't know if you know of something. I'm not.
Well, as you know, Shannon, we have an airport master plan, and it needs to be updated, and I believe that's in the plans at some point in the future. And the airport supervisor should be up to date on all that, and as part of the airport advisory board, I would think that you would have access to all of that information through the airport.
We do have access, it doesn't seem to exist.
Okay.
But maybe that's
That'd be a good project for the advisory board.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
It seems that when we talk about the airport and the economic impacts, we fixate on scheduled passenger air service, and I don't know that we recognize the fact that we have two viable cargo services in here right now. Plus,
Yes.
we have several other businesses located on the airport that are arguably aviation specific. But I don't think what we recognize is the amount of dollars the airport brings into the community, notwithstanding medical certain conditions that fly in and out of Lake Havasu that have office hours in Lake Havasu. I think we documented several $1 million of economic impact, and we don't seem to talk about that in the total economic viability of Lake Havasu. I guess I'd like to change that.
Absolutely. I mean, the airport is important to the community. There's no doubt. Most people you talk to on the street are more concerned about a commercial air service than anything else. And I get that, but until we have enough businesses that require day-to-day business travel, it's hard for those companies to succeed. I know when we had Mesa Airline here, it wasn't used very much, and it was a two-edged sword. Let me tell you, because I know that when I needed it, in many cases they canceled their flights on it. So after a while, you quit relying on it and just went ahead and drove to Vegas or Phoenix. So it is a two-edged sword, but there isn't as much day-to-day travel as people might think, and therefore it's tough to get any sort of regular commercial air service. But there is no doubt that the airport, from an economic development standpoint, is very important to our community. We've got 3 FBOs out there. It's a great, right now, a great airport for private users. They enjoy it. It's a wonderful airport. There's no doubt about it. And I think it can be more than it is today. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
Notwithstanding Bullhead's coming announcement, the air service that Bullhead has is Part 125 scheduled charter, and it's driven solely by the casinos. They buy X amount of seats on those airplanes.
Yes, they do.
Some country then resells them.
Yep.
It's a very different dynamic than scheduled air service that has to stand alone on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Part 125 just comes when they have the seats sold. They don't have to come every day.
Right.
There are issues.
We think that's going to change, Shannon, and we think we think, based on information that we have preliminarily with respect to the announcement that's coming for Bullhead Laughlin Airport, it could be 135 service, and if it is, it'll be interesting to see how many folks from Lake Havasu City will travel that hour and a half to save an hour from driving to Vegas or to Phoenix, and just go to Laughlin Bullhead and catch a flight out of there to, I assume, to one of the major hubs in the area, LA or Phoenix, I would assume. So based on those numbers, once we can start gathering that data, I think all of that can help work towards justifying, bringing commercial, or that would help the business decision that the major airlines might have to make with respect to bringing service to Lake Havasu.
I believe we have two Part 135 operations out of Lake Havasu today, but I don't believe the use of those aircraft to go to either location by local residents is probably nil. I think most of that business is coming from going to Havasu to pick it up.
Well, there's a price point there too that certainly any one of us can call up and get a charter jet out of Lake Havasu City, this morning, if we're willing to pay the price, and not many of us can afford that price.
That's the same issue with scheduled service or Part 135.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, so we're hopeful that actually Bullhead City does get commercial air service. We would highly support that. We hope our citizens use it because again, it saves an hour each way going to Vegas. Saves money on parking because in Vegas you pay $16 a day. Theirs is $0. So there's
far.
So far, yeah. So there's some big pluses, and we're hoping that it's successful. Chuck.
And I hope the city doesn't do what they did before when they subsidized that airline that flew to Mace there to Ontario, and that was the worst thing that ever happened. They would cancel flights. They stranded my two daughters at Ontario Airport because they just canceled the flight.
Right.
And that. So I don't think the city taxpayers would go for subsidizing something like that for
It's not a good.
Yeah, well, I think that was a federal subsidy the last time.
Yeah, federal and state.
Yeah, and we aren't.
250,000.
We
It was
aren't.
actually 600,000.
We
It was
aren't
a combination,
interested.
400 federal, 200 state. That was in 2002.
Just a brief update on where we're at on fields. Right now, we are working on Cypress. The Cypress will be adding more soccer fields. One, a very large field with a couple of other smaller ones. The large field will have lighting. We have not agreed to put lighting in on the smaller fields at this point in time. Maybe at some future date we could do that. The smaller fields are designed for the 6 to 8 year olds and that sort of thing. The other fields are for the bigger kids. We're also going to complete our design of Sarah Park for fields there, and with the idea that we'll finish Cypress, construction of Cypress, probably by the spring, if not sooner, and then we're going to begin the construction of new ball fields at Sarah Park starting around July 1 of 2017 and finishing them up sometime in 2018. There was an article, by the way, because I got a couple questions on it, that the city was voiding a grant for bathrooms at Sarah Park, and somehow people believed that we were going to build all these new ball fields and we weren't going to have bathrooms. That bathroom was at the trailhead for going down to the lake. That's what that bathroom was all about, and not for all the ball fields. So just to get that out there, yes, when we have new ball fields, we will be putting in bathrooms and whatnot. But the grant was for what, 50 grand if I remember right. The cost of the bathroom was Yeah, it was ridiculous. I don't know how a bathroom could cost this much. So we're going to relook at that, but that means our grant expires, and we're good with that because we weren't going to get a grant for 50 grand and then spend another 150 or whatever it is to put in a bathroom. It made no sense whatsoever. Rather have the grant go away and we'll spend less. So we'll get there, but we do recognize the fact that the trailhead needs some amenities there because it's really popular these days, and we recognize that. So we'll get there.
Yeah, you're right. Outhouses are cheaper.
Outhouses, but we'll find some sort of modular kind of bathroom. We're also putting, for those of you who don't know, we are putting bathrooms at the Mesquite Park, which is what we're calling it, but it's really there where the splash pad is at, and the parking lot. There'll be bathrooms there as well. So and shade structures, right? Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, it has been talked about on the relocation. Is it going to be a relocation, or are they keeping at Sarah Park? Sorry, relocating or keeping the motocross track and the racetrack?
We don't know yet. The preliminary planning hasn't even begun on that complex.
That's what I'm asking.
What we have now is basically a sports complex, a picture of a sports complex that's just superimposed on a map of Sarah Park. It's not going to end up looking that way. It's probably going to end up being broken up so that we can accommodate the federal washes that we can't disturb out there, as well as drainage and other issues. We don't know how the final footprint is going to affect the existing users out there. No, I know there's a lot of speculation out there about who's going to be able to stay and who has to go. We're going to try and disturb as few of the existing users as possible, but there's likely to be some impacts. I know that the radio controlled flyer folks, they just invested in their facility out there, and it's kind of in the way in some of the plans. So we're going to look at those. The motocross track is one that's likely to be most likely impacted because it's like right there in the middle of it. The folks who established that motocross park several years ago were informed going in that their presence there is temporary at best because we do have a master plan for that area. And at the time, they were very willing to take whatever time would be available to them at that spot. Certainly, we won't, abandon them. We'll assist them in relocating the best way we can. We want to minimize those impacts as much as possible. But it's, there will be impacts. We just don't know to what extent.
Yeah, I'd like to hopefully see it stay. I'd like to in the future because that type of racing is very popular in other bigger cities. To be able to have a 2 or 3 time a year draw of some good races, incorporate somebody in there to really design a good track where they can do it. It would be a good money draw eventually if the track were brought up to professional standards.
Well, we are in the process. We are negotiating as we speak with Arizona State Trust Lands on acquiring or securing, I should say, that property where the Works races used to be or are being conducted next to Crazy Horse Campground. That property, which used to be in the Crazy Horse lease, state land lease, was dropped when they renegotiated that lease. So now that land is available in kind of a no man's land. The state lands has made it clear that they're not interested in being in the special event business. And so they want somebody else to lease that land and take control of it and be responsible for it. The city has stepped up and said, we're willing to do that, but not at the expense, not at a high expense. And right now we're kind of haggling over the price, so to speak. There's a $2,400 a year permit process, but then they're asking for another sum of money that we think is too big. And the Convention and Visitors Bureau is also involved in the negotiation because I'm going to be looking at them to pay that price. And right now it just doesn't pencil out from a business standpoint. But I expect that site will be used for those, like works races and the big races.
Right.
But as far as being a 24/7 motocross facility, that's not likely to happen on that.
Right, the last post that Works said that this year was going to be their last year. That's why I was wondering if Works was in contact with the city to go further and keep coming back until something's decided.
Well, we're working to secure that property. We're not looking to buy it, but we want to nail it down so that we can have control over it, so that Works and not just Works, but other users can also have access to that property as a special event venue.
Yeah, we know it's important to Works, which is why we're trying to secure the property. But interestingly enough, none of the Works top management has ever come to see us about it.
Yeah.
Really?
Not
Nobody from Works has ever contacted me.
Huh.
But I've done a lot of work on their behalf, but I've never heard
Yeah,
from them.
exactly. We hear through the grapevine then, but not a single one has set foot in their
Do
office.
they know what you just told me about the property?
Well, since they don't show up in our office, it's hard to
I
tell.
I believe they're getting most of their information through the Convention Visitors Bureau.
Wow. Well,
But I don't know that for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, because we've been working since last spring to secure that property on behalf of Works.
And we were asked to do that by the CBB.
Right, not by Works. So, because my brother is an over 50 Works champion, so I know how important those races are to the community. I went to see him race, and I was expecting something pretty small, and I was shocked at how large those races are, how many people show up in their RVs. I mean, it's really cool.
It's big,
It's big.
That's why I'm bringing up the fact of incorporating bigger events, because the off-road enterprise has not shrunk, it's grown.
Yeah.
Especially in the inception of the side-by-side race, they incorporate that into everything. And everywhere they have, Glen Helen, all of the tracks, it's a big, you'd be amazed at the numbers that draw and the money.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, they're interesting races to watch because they stagger, and so you just see motorcycles flying all over. It's like a big anthill. People are flying, and you can't figure out who's in first because they're in different classes. But they do have that electronic board that.
This is why I'm asking. We've been involved in off-roading racing stuff for so many years, and I'm going to look into that. But thank you for that.
Yeah, we know it's important. And we're trying to secure the property. June.
What is the progress on the pickleball courts?
All right.
Started my.
Somebody escort her out.
Chuck, you taking up pickleball?
On one of my bowling leagues, and there's several residents that have their own pickleball courts in their backyard. But quite a few of them came up to me and asked me, what's going on?
Yeah, they're actually, we expect the construction to be complete when? By the end of next few months?
Sorry, I know it's progressing there, but I don't know when they expect to finish.
Yeah, but I know they're in this year's budget to be finished.
It is moving forward. They will get done. I'm sorry, I don't know exactly where we are on the timeline. But initially there'll be 4 courts, but we're master planning for a total of 16. And I know staff has been in contact with the pickleball organization folks. And while the city will be constructing, the basic pickleball facility, so to speak, the organization is coming forward and they've offered to do like the bleachers and shade and some of the other amenities that they would like to see out there. So we're happy that they're willing to put some skin into the game. And so that's how we're moving forward. I just don't know, when you'll see equipment moving or when it's proposed to be finished. All I know is that it's still actively underway.
Chuck.
I'm glad she brought it up, not me. On the Lions Dog Park, my grandson and his girlfriend came down from Ventura and spent the week with us. And one day we went and got some fast food, went over to one of the cabanas, because they wanted to go paddleboard, rent some paddleboards and do that. And so we took it up to one of the cabanas, And those concrete benches, the edges are all broken off and it's very sharp. I, cut the back of my leg pretty bad on one of them in that. And I asked, my grandson and that, is your benches broke down to the edges of that? So can they check into that and see if there's any kind of repairs they can do to those things, or?
This is in the dog park itself or outside the dog?
It's not inside the dog park. It's one of the cabanas that you can go to and get under and eat lunch or whatever you want to do.
Over by the dog park.
Yeah, it's on the London Bridge Beach.
Okay.
In that, but
Is it along the?
It's almost to the end. You go all the way to the end. Coming in from McCullough, all the way to the end. It was that one right there. Just to.
Okay.
And that because then we walked right down because that's where the paddleboard guy was and stuff that they rented paddleboards from.
Yeah, let us take a look at that.
Yeah, Jerry's made a note of it. We'll look into it. Probably skateboarders. They like to grind off those benches.
Whenever they use concrete benches, they don't need to put lifts on them.
Yeah.
That's the part that breaks off.
Yeah, we'll check with our bench people, and there may be a bench model out there that's kind of designed to discourage that type of activity. Hopefully, that's old damage, and that the new skate park has diverted that to another place. So, but it's something we'll look into and check.
Okay, thank you.
You guys talk about the Main Street contract and what difference it is compared to what Rudat suggested?
Oh, the design guidelines. And I'll let Charlie get into it in more detail, but basically the contract that we let was for an organization to take all the various studies that have been done on the Main Street area. When I say the Main Street area, that includes all the way to Swanson and Mesquite, and kind of pick out some of the best pieces and put together some consistent design guidelines. We've had a lot of requests for instance, of a restaurant that says, I want to do street dining. I want to be able to allow my customers to sit on the sidewalk and dine. The problem with it is that the sidewalks aren't wide enough. And so you cause issues with people who need to pass. The trees are there. They also, a lot of times, they want to serve liquor in those areas, but you can't do that unless you have a special permit and it's fenced off. And so what we're trying to do is allow for additional sidewalks for those who require that. But for the most part, what we're really trying to do is create some consistency for the downtown development. And they're going to look at a number of different areas. Traffic calming, again, is one of those areas. We also believe that while we know how important to many merchants that parking is in front of their store, there is a lot of parking behind all of the stores that goes unutilized, totally unutilized. And you say, well, why is that? Well, I know as a user, I go back there and I can't figure out where the store's at because they don't have any signage. I mean, zero. And so you go back there and you go, is that the building? Is that the building?
Can I get in through the back door?
Can I get in through the back? And so that's another part of the project, is that the city actually has a lot of, I guess you call them right-of-ways or throughout all that area, and we're gonna try to beautify those as well, so that people will begin to utilize those. It becomes a walking area. So that's pretty much what that contract's all about. I don't know if you want to add to that. Or.
No, that pretty much covers it. It's a consistent design that we would like to give merchants the ability, the opportunity to bump those sidewalks out and create a sidewalk dining environment, and with awnings and kind of a San Antonio Riverwalk type of environment. But we're going to lose some parking along Main Street, and at some point in the future, Once we get to a point to where we've kind of piecemealed these bump outs along Main Street, there will come a time when it just makes sense to go along for the city to come in and just finish out that project and complete the entire boulevard. Parking would be eliminated, and this is just the vision that I have in my mind. It will evolve over time, but what I have in my mind is pullouts for either public transit or a place where you can have passenger drop off and pick up on McCulloch. But then, as the mayor said, most of the customer parking is going to be on the back sides of these businesses where the parking really is, and the secondary benefit there is that hopefully those merchants will look at the backs of those buildings and fix them up, clean them up, have a secondary access to their businesses and not just a back door, so that, and in effect, over time, the idea is that there would actually be not only the McCulloch Boulevard part of Main Street, but there would be that you would have the Mesquite and the Swanson Main Streets in themselves, and the alleys between can actually become part of the downtown experience.
Charlie, all of that was very detailed in the RUDAT study. It sounds to me like we're buying another study that's going to say the same thing that's on a book, in a book on the shelf in your office.
Well, the RUDAT study did not eliminate parking on Main Street. It made it all parallel parking. It didn't include widening the sidewalks. It did include a landscape median down the middle of the street, and you'll remember how that went when we attempted to begin that project. So this new study will actually take those elements of RUDAT that will work for Main Street and basically get the stuff that won't work for Main Street behind us and look at it moving forward. It'll also incorporate the data that was generated by the Paris study, which was the actual traffic, examining the traffic, and that's all part of the Vision 2020 plan as well. But you know, we had studied one-way, they call one-way couplets on Mesquite and Swanson, making them one-way, putting in roundabouts, things like that. There's some of those elements that will work for Lake Havasu City and others that don't. So the purpose behind this study is to look at that again and take what will work for Lake Havasu City, put it into a concept plan. One of the things that I'm really looking forward to as a part of this study is the 3D graphics, the animation, the concept renderings that will come out of it. I think once the community can actually look at a picture or do a virtual drive up the street to see how it's going to look and feel and work for Lake Havasu City, I think we'll have a much better basis of support for actually moving forward than we have in any of the prior studies, including RUDAT.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point that we've had these studies and yet nothing's really happened. I think Councilmember Barlow made the point that until we can get the merchants behind the project, it does get stalled. And so we're trying to take the things that...
You mean herding cats, Mayor?
At times it is herding cats. And,
but sometimes you can throw a fish down the street.
yeah, and they're all over it.
Throw a corral around them.
Yeah, and so we recognize that there were parts of RUDAT that people just really didn't like and other parts that they did. And this isn't a new study. It's really trying to take all the pieces that people seem to like. For instance, RUDAT had cottonwood trees. People thought that was a horrible idea. And frankly, it was a horrible idea. So it's getting rid of those things, putting things together. And as Charlie says, when you're able to show them a 3D, how this is going to look, people start going, oh my goodness, you know, we ought to do that. What do we need to do to get that done? I found it interesting. If you go way back to the RUDAT, which was what, 2007, and they proposed medians down the street, and everybody hated the idea, I shouldn't say everybody, the merchants really hated the idea of putting medians down McCulloch Boulevard. At the very same time, where I used to live, which was Folsom, California, there was a big uproar about medians. It wasn't putting them in, it was taking them out. So it just depends on your perspective. The community there goes, oh, these medians have been there a long time and we love them and whatever, don't take them out. Where here, we don't have them and they were saying, don't put them in. So it just depends on perspective. And so we get the thing about the medians, but we think there are elements of all the studies that could be implemented to beautify the downtown area. The objective that we have, and if I can get this bug off of me, the objective we have is to not allow downtown to become many downtowns throughout rural America, and that is they decayed. They went downhill. Nobody wanted to visit them anymore because there wasn't anything there. And now they're spending tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars trying to revitalize their downtown. We're trying to avoid that. We know that downtown Lake Havasu City is a gathering spot. Go there on Thursdays. Go there on special events. Where do they want to go? Go down to McCulloch Boulevard. Well, we want to make it so that people go, I want to go there on any given night throughout the week. And and that's going to require some money. It's going to require some vision and a plan. And we believe we've got those in place.
And to just kind of put a cap on that, one of the things that was not a factor when RUDAT was done, or when PARA was done, or when any of the prior studies were done, was ASU. And ASU is certainly a factor in what we do downtown moving forward. And obviously that's part of the Vision 2020 plan, and certainly it makes for prudent planning, because in my estimation ASU and its presence here over time will become a motivating factor in much of the economic development that we do and infrastructure improvements that we do, particularly in the downtown area.
Okay, my boss just gave me a list of things I'm supposed to make sure I talk about. Okay, yeah, and this is a great point. We briefly talked about Vision 2020 early on and where the progress that we have. And Jerry, don't hesitate to jump up and explain it better than I'm going to here. But there'll be a Vision 2020 float that will be part of the London Bridge Days Parade. But then we're going to have a special event at the Springburg McAndrew Park that allows the community, and we hope everybody will be there, to get an update as to where we are on all 5 pillars. And it is my understanding is that there'll be a little passport card, is that correct? Where if you go through, you get every one of them punched. What do you get a
free flat screen TV?
Yeah, so you get a chance at a free flat screen TV. So this is all part of Pillar 5, which is community engagement. And one of the things that Frontier Communications, as part of the America's Best Communities competition, wants every community to do is to engage their community. And we're one of the few communities that actually, I think we're the only community that actually held a town hall to bring 200 to 300 people to help develop our plan. But it doesn't stop there. We want to make sure the entire community understands where we're at on the plan. Also there will be a beer garden, there'll be bounce houses, snow cones, hot dogs, and of course we mentioned the free TV giveaway. So I encourage you, if you're going to go down for the London Bridge Days Parade, stop by the Springburg McAndrew Park and see what everybody's up to. One of the things we're very happy about is, and I've mentioned this before, that our original ABC team was 25 individuals that were probably the age of Charlie and I, for the most part.
Youngsters.
Yeah, we're real youngsters. But what we're trying to do is address the demographic starvation in our community and lower the average age in our community. But the only way to do that is to engage those who are 40 and under. And we invited, and they agreed to have more than 20 other individuals who are under age 40 that are now very heavily involved in the ABC process. They're co-champions of all the pillars. Quite honestly, they've taken the reins and run with it. I mean, it's great to see. I couldn't be more proud of the community doing that.
Yeah, it's interesting, and sorry to jump in there, but it's really interesting when the core group that the mayor said were basically, gray-haired guys like us that were starting this thing, and the idea was to and the idea being, to bring down the median age, to increase the energy level, to broaden the horizons of our community. And it's amazing that when we invited the millennials and the younger folks to come in and be a part of the process, they practically lined up to join the process. Everybody that we asked if they wanted to be a part of it agreed, and they are all a part of it now. And it's amazing that exactly what it is we're trying to do for the community happened to the committee, because we brought down the age group, we increased the energy level, the ideas began to flow. It was almost magical how that happened, and it's encouraging to see that happen on an almost microscopic level when we're attempting to do the exact same thing for the entire community.
And their ability and knowledge of reaching out via social media is obviously much better than ours. They put videos, they've created, and you can even go on my Facebook page and you'll see a video on Lake Havasu City millennials. It's great. These guys put this together. It showcases a number of millennials in our community and how they've been successful, and that video is really speaking to millennials who do not live in Lake Havasu City, and trying to let them know that if you want a great place to work and live and play and enjoy and raise a family, you need to look at Lake Havasu City. And it's an absolutely spectacular video, so I would encourage you to go take a look at it. Chuck.
Real quick, that Freeman Ranch and Andrew Park, isn't that where the old Bird Square was?
What?
Bird Square?
No.
It's up further, okay.
On the corner of Quarry and McCullough Boulevard.
The other thing was Harry was saying about the 3D. You're welcome. About the study that's going to go on and that. I wish the city would do more on communicating all their stuff like that. Maybe put it on the city channel. Have talks about the 280 project and different things like that where people can watch it that don't come to the Coffee with the Mayor or the city council meetings. The paper really doesn't give you a whole lot of information on a lot of that stuff.
No, it doesn't. And for instance, the Coffee with the Mayor, it is on Channel 4.
Right.
So it can be seen that way. But you're right. We're looking at more ways to be able to communicate to our citizens so they know exactly what we're trying to accomplish. And that's part of the Vision 2020 as well, is that community engagement.
Is Sonsky's the only place that actually has seating between the building and the sidewalk? There's
Red Onion.
Red Onion.
But I thought theirs was behind the sidewalk.
But we only allowed them to put a fence up to their property line.
Right.
Because if they do encroach out onto the sidewalk, as the mayor said earlier, the sidewalk isn't wide enough to accommodate commerce and ADA and not be an encumbrance to people who just want to walk down the sidewalk and not have to step around somebody's fence. So, but there are a few where the buildings were not built right to the property line. Right. So, and some of them have put up little fences and things like that, and that's perfectly all right.
Some have them between buildings, like Jay's Smoke Shop and Bad Dogs. They have
In fact, Jace, well, it's not Jace anymore, it's something else, but they have a little seating area out in front.
Bugs has seating.
Bugs. In fact, Fugs is one of the merchants who would like to have a sidewalk seating area out on the McCulloch side as well. And unfortunately, the sidewalk width doesn't allow that. But I would venture to guess that given the opportunity to go ahead and pay for their own improvements to move that walkway out, they would be one of the first ones to do it.
To do wherever they're parking in front of their.
Well, they still have parking, they just have made it a little smaller. They fenced in that area. But they would do away with the parking on McCulloch, yes.
Yeah, McCulloch.
You're right.
Yeah, we're going to be also improving the street itself. It needs to be fixed. The street has got a very low index, so we know that we're going to have to spend quite a bit of money improving the pavement, which is really what made us say, well, if we're going to do that, maybe we ought to be thinking about some of these other improvements at exactly the same time. We only have a couple minutes left. Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to reiterate something, since we work with you with the VRT and all that, regarding the veterans. Polaris has come aboard in the last couple of years, speaking of racing, and they have incorporated programs to work with the disabled veterans, and they hold a certain amount of events throughout California and different states to bring the disabled veterans and take them on 3-day weekends out in the desert, out in the sand dunes, wherever, and they take a certain amount for those 3 days. Polaris sets up cities out there for these events. It takes them on excursions, lets them drive, whatever they want to do for these 3 days, all backed by Polaris. Cool. So that's just another thing that could end up in this area. Being sponsored by that, and just show what we do for the veterans.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last quick question, Mayor.
Sure.
Is there ever going to be a resolution to the situation with the arches? They've now stood there and rusted away for what, 5 years now?
Well, as you know, that was not a city project.
Right. Yeah, but you guys got the metal cutters that could.
You mean you don't like those really heavy-looking flagpoles? I don't know. The Main Street merchants talked a little bit about some ideas. I think what happened was that the cost to put that arch was well beyond what they thought it was going to be because of the engineering.
Which is why you guys wouldn't back the project unless they could come up with the dough.
Right.
Well, and that's kind of, I mean, I will take the blame for being the most obstinate one in all of that. Certainly, if the city wanted to spend your tax dollars to go in and finish that arch project, we could do it. But when the Main Street folks who got the grant to actually put in those pedestals wanted to move forward with that, I said, well, if you start it, you're going to be the ones to finish it. Don't leave us an unfinished project for the taxpayers to pick up. And unfortunately, that's where it landed. But you know what? I'm still being obstinate about that. It's like they started it. By golly, they're going to finish it. And I'll probably be overruled at some point in the future. But that's kind of where we're at this point. So.
Yeah,
And the rest of us pay for something that's going to benefit downtown. Basically.
Is that right there on the corner of
Yeah.
Watson
Well,
and
you know, improving
School Street
downtown
and
benefits
Culver?
the entire
Yeah.
community. There's no doubt about that. But that project's different. By golly.
Veterans Court, for those who would like to go see a graduation, a week from today, October 14th at 1:30, we will be graduating 6 veterans from our Veterans Court. If you've never been to it, I highly encourage you to go. This Veterans Court changes lives, and you will see that on the veterans that are graduating from the program. You know, when we started this 3+ years ago, even the judge said, well, we probably won't ever get more than 10 or 15 people in our court. Even with 6 graduating now, we're going to be at 60. And we now will have somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think, 56 or 7 graduates, and only 1 has reoffended. So the program is incredibly successful. If you think about the normal court, 75% of the people that go into court come back to court at some time. And for our Veterans Court to only have one, which is basically what, less than a 5% recidivism rate, unbelievable, spectacular, means it's working. And when you talk to the veterans that have gone through the treatment court, they'll tell you it works. It works. So we're very proud of that. Next month, November, we will not have a mayor's coffee. I have to be in Phoenix for the League of Arizona Cities and Towns. As you probably saw in the paper, I'm now the vice president of that organization, so I cannot just decide not to go. It wouldn't be too good. But we will pick it up in December, and it will be at the Bagel Bin. Is that correct? So the first Friday in December at the Bagel Bin, we will pick up the conversation and go from there.